If you like the video, then please consider supporting Slope's Game Room on Patreon. Come on, you knew it was only a matter of time before I did this one, right? Pepsiman! This is the part of the complete history video where I tell all of you guys about my history with the game. Nope, no history here. Just like pretty much all of you guys in the Western world, I didn't know who the hell Pepsiman was. But thankfully, due to the rise of retro gaming obscurity channels like my own, we now all know of some of video games' weirdest mascots that never made it to our shores. And Pepsiman is most definitely one of them. Yes, Pepsiman was primarily a Japanese mascot, a very Japanese mascot. Now you may be thinking to yourself, why the hell did we get stuff like Spice Girl Pepsi promotions when Japan got the cool Pepsiman promos? Well, it's because Japan is obviously weirdly Pepsi crazy. Anyone fancy some strawberries and milk Pepsi? The ice cucumber Pepsi? Red bean Pepsi? Salty watermelon Pepsi? Cake flavoured Pepsi? Hyper caffeinated Pepsi? And best of all, Ghost Pepsi. Basically 14 different Pepsi flavours that you, the consumer, would have to guess the flavour while sipping. Let's hope nobody got that Sonic curry flavoured Pepsi right. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a plug. Yeah, Japan loves this stuff, and it obviously sells well enough to continue on to this very day. And thankfully, due to the internet, Pepsi has almost become a bit of a household name to anybody out there with the slightest interest in retro gaming, a YouTube account, and of course Pepsi. Haha, fed up with the word Pepsi yet, are you? Oh, come on, it's only been said 19 times so far. You still got another 81 to go. So, join me as we take a look at Pepsiman. We'll be looking at the history, the weird promos, the cameos, and of course, the games. Welcome to Slope's Game Room. Isn't it kinda strange that Pepsi actually gained his legendary status due to a game that pretty much failed? Well, when I say failed, I say it very loosely. The developers knew it wouldn't be a big hit, and considering it hit the shelves at only 2,800 yen, which is the equivalent of about 20 quid, it still was considered a failure for the company that made it. That was until the YouTube user Uber Hacksaw Nova uploaded a let's play of it and was one of the first people to bring Pepsiman into the mainstream. Obviously the company was hoping it was weird enough, and obviously because of this fact alone it would actually sell. Well, enough to warrant making the game in the first place. And to be fair, that most definitely happened, although sadly, it happened 15 years too late. But guys, come on, you know the score. Chatting about the eventual PlayStation gem that boosted Pepsiman's worldwide status is most definitely way too recent for this complete history series. And because of that, yeah, I think we're in fact getting a little ahead of ourselves. So, let's go back to the beginning. Back in 1983, I, Daniel Ibbotson, aka Slope's Game Room, was born. And probably more importantly for this complete history, Coke and Pepsi were in the middle of an all-out war. And although Coke Wars was also known as Pepsi Invaders, it doesn't really have much to do with the Pepsi company or Pepsiman for that matter. I do feel like I'm never going to get the chance to mention this again, so here we go. Created by Coca-Cola and only ever given away at the 1983 sales convention to sales executives along with the system itself, this official ROM hack was made to poke fun at Pepsi. And it did it pretty well. In fact, if you fancy grabbing the game yourself, then it's going to run you about $2,000 as it's so incredibly rare. From what I can tell, this is the first game based on a drink. Yeah, the more widely known Kool-Aid game did in fact come out at the same year, but it wasn't until the mid-90s when it weirdly hit a bit of a mini trend. You got the more well-known ones like Cool Spot and Coca-Cola Kid, but what about the unreleased 7-Up mascot Fido Dido? Which just goes to show that junk food companies took their mascots very seriously, as Fido Dido was so close to being released, even getting one magazine going as far as to say the game was available now, before 7-Up decided to quickly stop its release in favour of their new design, Cool Spot. And yes, don't worry, I will eventually get to that little dot. Well, it was about this time that in Japan, when Pepsi decided that they needed a mascot of their own, and it was Pyramid Films in Tokyo that got hold of Californian-based Industrial Light and Magic, yes, the same Light and Magic that you're thinking of, to basically create the adverts for Pepsiman, which, like I said, became the official mascot of Pepsi of Japan. So yeah, this was Pepsiman's first of 12 very American looking adverts. And they all pretty much go the same way. This is Pepsiman, and this is a sad act in desperate need of, well, something. Pepsiman then runs fairly quickly, gives the little brat what he needs, which turns out to be a Pepsi, by simply doing this. And everyone's happy. Pepsiman then proceeds to exit in a slapstick sort of getaway fashion, and hilarity ensues, which has hopefully made your mouth all dry, with the only real solution being to neck a can of Pepsi. Preferably not a dented one though. So yeah, that's pretty much it. A silly mascot that's so in your face. I mean, it's literally a Pepsi logo with arms, legs and a six-pack giving Pepsi to people that want Pepsi. But that's fine, it's so far into the realm of ridiculousness that you forgive it. And before you know it, you will be waking up to the tune of Pepsiman playing in your brain, only curable by drinking a nice carbonated drink of Pepsi. An adequate amount of advertising, 12 adverts to be precise, and plenty of Pepsiman merch hit the shelves shortly after, most of which involved you actually buying Pepsi to acquire, just like the popular Pepsiman bottle caps, which, I'm not gonna lie, would easily influence me to go and give myself a bloody heart attack ingesting bottles after bottles of Pepsi in an attempt to go and get them all. And by the way guys, if any of you fancy sending me a Pepsiman action figure, yes, that would be great. Pepsiman was taking over Japan, and the more he was on telly, the more people wanted him, resulting in the first time that Pepsiman made his way into a video game.
Fighting Vipers in the Viper Theater.
This is Fighting Vipers, and due to a collaboration between Pepsi and Sega, if you own this, then you're not gonna get to play as Pepsiman. Nope. However, if you own the Japanese release on the Saturn, lose the first battle without touching your opponent, wait for the new challenger approaching thing to happen, who just so happens to be Pepsiman, you beat him, which in turn lets you unlock him. That's literally it. And for all of you out there that want to know how he plays, well yeah, he's actually pretty good. Taking the vast majority of his moveset from Tokyo and a couple from Picky apparently, which arguably gives Pepsiman some of the best combo moves in the whole roster. Not bad, right? Like I said, Pepsiman was only available on the Japanese release of Fighting Vipers, and is not even in the Western release's code. In fact, try and boot up the game with the Japanese Pepsi character save, and all you're gonna get is a crashed, unplayable mess. So, what's next? Well, before we get into the game that everybody is waiting for, you may not know this, but Pepsiman actually hit the arcades first in one of the most bare-bone arcade games to ever sit dormant in your main folder. Literally, this is it. What you're seeing here is not only a complete history of Pepsiman, but essentially a long play of this game created by Sigma. The game was released in Japan arcades exclusively, obviously, and is simply, well, it's Rock, Paper, Scissors, the arcade game. So for all three of you Alex Kidd Boss Battle fans, this is something you probably want to be picking up. You simply play Rock, Paper, Scissors, then jump onto a roulette wheel to multiply your winnings, and honestly, that is it. No, seriously, that is it. For me, I like it because it's got some rather nice pixel artwork, and Rock, Paper, Scissors is, well, it's sort of fun for 5 minutes, I suppose. Regardless, it just goes to show that Pepsi wanted to slap Pepsiman in your face and wasn't ashamed on how they were gonna do it. In fact, when talking to my good friend and constant collaborator Jimmy Happer, who, in case you didn't know, lives in Japan, he explained you couldn't go very far without bumping into some kind of Pepsiman promotion in the mascot's heyday. More bottle caps appeared, more action figures appeared, and even more Pepsi characters appeared too. This is Pepsi Woman, who dishes out Diet Lemon flavoured Pepsi to all the girls who need it. You may have noticed that Pepsiman looks a little bit different at this point, and that was all due to the redesign of the Pepsi logo. It was at this point that Pepsi got hold of Travis Charest, a well-known comic book artist who had previously worked on cover art for both Star Wars and Marvel Comics, to create a brand new image to be released on his limited edition can of Pepsi. And here it is. The can you see right here is actually Travis's personal can with a nice surfing Pepsiman action figure included. It's often thought that Travis was part of the creation of Pepsiman, and after emailing him directly, he did confirm that this was not the case. Anyway, it was only a matter of time before Pepsiman found his way back into the gaming sphere, and towards the end of the 90s, Pepsi got hold of Kindle Imagine Develop, better known as simply Kid, to create the game Pepsiman. Kid have made the odd notable little title before this, like G.I. Joe for the NES, UFO Cayman Yakuza Band. Don't worry, there's a card up the top there if you want to know what that's all about. And Super Bowling on the Super Nintendo. Yeah, as you can see, nothing here really stands out too much. Games that you're happy exist, but nothing that you're really that worried about grabbing unless you're a hardcore collector for whatever system they come out on. Other than the huge following that Pepsiman gained, at the time it was actually Topshop, which is probably one of the most popular games that the company pumped out. A game which borrowed gameplay elements from games such as Monopoly. It gained average scores, it did get a US release, and it's a perfect example of a forgettable video game, which pretty much sums up this company perfectly, as the other 80 or 90% of their games ended up being romantic visual novels. They had a small budget, and like I said, the game at first sold quite badly, and even though there was plans to bring it to America and possibly Europe, although I highly doubt that, those plans fell flat. So with that, Pepsiman, what's it like? Well, it is damn short. You know those running towards or away from the camera sections of Crash Bandicoot? Well, this is simply that. Just not as good and a hell of a lot more branding involved. Oh yeah, and let's not forget the perfectly broken English cutscenes in between the levels acted out by Mike Butters, who is most definitely more well known for his acting work in several Saw movies. Basketball, Dante's Peak, Jack Frost, D2 the Mighty Ducks, and even Titanic. Only joking. When you type this guy's name into Google, the very first video suggestion that comes up is Pepsiman. Kotaro Ichiko was the guy responsible for making the game. And get this, it was his first job at the company. Surprising considering he was actually hired to make video game adaptations of board games instead. Nowadays, he is far better known for his work on several visual novels. It was a cheap game to make and it cost practically nothing. In fact, when looking into the game's data, quite a lot of the game's creation tools like level designers and debug menus can be found within. In fact, you can actually get to these yourself using the following GameShark code. But what's probably most interesting about all of this is the unused cheerleader audio for a level that he never made.
Pepsiman, we're the cheerleaders for the football team playing in the stadium, and we are exhausted from cheering too much. We came to buy some Pepsi. None of us will settle for anything but Pepsi, and we're so tired. We don't have the energy to cheerlead, but all the Pepsi around here is sold out. What's going on? Please do something, Pepsiman.
Who knows why this never made the final game? For whatever reason, time and money is my guess. This level was never included, and all we ended up getting was 4 stages in total. And to be fair, that's all you really need. Sure, would have liked the game to be a little bit longer, but considering it's an adver game, yes, that's a real term, it does what it needs to do. And unlike the majority of other similar games, it's actually pretty fun. And like I said, although it did sell badly in those early days, it has gained a serious cult following in the last 5 years or so, hitting major popularity around the year 2012 and 2013. Not only with that Let's Play that I spoke about earlier, but the hilarious Motendu video, which is age restricted, so we won't be showing the bass drop sections in this video. Thank you very much. I'll let you guys go and discover that one yourself. All of this helped Pepsi Man spread like wildfire, which still simmers strongly to this day, with constant long plays, parodies, and Twitter user @TheBoix, who is essentially the people's champ at speedrunning Pepsi Man, constantly gathering a large crowd to watch him whilst he dons his custom-made Mike Butters t-shirt. And would you look at that? He even brings along Pepsi Man himself for moral support. I actually reached out to this guy to find out what it was about Pepsi Man that he liked so much. Pepsi Man is a game that just oozes charm. The music, the goofiness, the cutscenes, they all combine together into this extremely fun experience. The developers and the film crew had a fun time with it, and that really shows in the game. Even after 3 years of speedrunning what is essentially a fairly linear game, I still find every run to be as enjoyable as my first. And to be fair, I think we're all in the same boat. Pepsi Man may be gone, but his legacy lives on. And because of this random plastic tat and a failed game which actually now go for silly money on eBay, that's all fine by me, as it all just helps push the ridiculousness that is Pepsi Man way, way, way up in my eyes. And even though Pepsi may have moved into different marketing strategies nowadays with their release of J Cola, a more hardcore Pepsi flavour with a strong aftertaste aimed to be sold to heavy users, which is the real term used by fizzy drink companies for people that are hardcore carbonated drinkers, and the rather impressive heavy metal infused Mad Max inspired style advert to go alongside it, I think we can all agree that they hit their peak with Pepsi Man. And hey, if you're still not convinced and you think Pepsi Man's a bit of a weird mascot, technically he's not that weird at all. Like I said, remember Kool-Aid Man and that Kool-Aid Man video game? Not so weird now, is he? And to be fair, at least Japan didn't make a game based on the mascot for Unko Furniture. You know, the Superfly Unko Man. Yes, that's a poo, and yes, that's a guy with a poo on his head. Anyone fancy going to IKEA? Hey there guys, this is DJ Slope and thank you all so much for checking out my video all about Pepsi and Pepsi Man. And this is the part of the video where I give a big special shout out to all of my Pepsi Patreons, with a big special shout out going to Ryan Burford, Gary Pepsi, Andrew Dalton, Christopher Turnbull, Aaron McNamara, Brent Craft, Ben Jackson, Joe Lazares, Ian H. Chapman, Video Game Basement, Hananas, Retro to Next Gen, Pixels.Limited, aka Samuel Victor, Red the Beard, John Fuller, Conrad Constantine, Pretendo64, Mike Fallon, Pepsi Gorvez, Pepsi Elephant, James Loveridge, Casey Garner, Blitz, Hedgie Ben Hall, Brian Rawson, Gerard Mr. T-Shirts, Marcus King, Emo Cut, Tyndall June, Rob Jenkins, The Geeky Dad, Richard Carter, aka Fantastic Dizzy, Dunder Control, Todd Paul Float G, and Petty Mew. If you want to be part of this list, get your name shouted out, get your name shown, drink a Pepsi, then please click the link that will eventually show on the screen. Don't forget to subscribe, drink a Pepsi, give it a thumbs up, a thumbs down, whatever you Pepsi. And hey, why not join my amazing Discord channel where we talk plenty about Pepsi and all of the good times that Pepsi brings. But anyway, I think that's enough from me. So for now, this is DJ Pepsi signing out. And hopefully, I'll Pepsi all Pepsi. Do you think I said Pepsi enough times? What, I've only said it 94 times? Oh, okay. Pepsi, 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 Pepsi.